Hey, what's up, everybody? I'll Drafter back with a brand new video. Now, you are probably wondering what we're talking about today, and I want to emphasize on something quite important. And this subject is actually one of the most important ones when it comes to credit repair. And the reason I say that is because I've had issues with customers not listening to the specific advice and actually trying to fix their personal credit. And they end up in a situation where they're actually stuck. And there's a whole lot of reasons as to why. And today, I want to really emphasize on trying to create for you some sort of system that I believe if you follow, you'll have direction, especially clear direction when it comes to getting results. But more than that, you'll have clear direction in reference to understanding timelines. The biggest struggle that I've seen with customers is they confuse the different timelines, right? So, for example, they send out mail, and from the day that they send it out, they calculate their 30 days in their head from that moment on. And the reality is that 30-day has to be calculated from upon which the party that you're sending it to, whether it be the credit bureaus, specifically the credit bureaus, or the creditors, the moment that they receive that, from that is when the 30-day calculation should start. It should never start prior to that. And the reason I say that is because the 30-day timeline is based on, for example, if you have, given them enough time to investigate. And the investigation should always start when the creditor and or credit bureaus receive the mail. So that's one of those things that I really want to focus on. The other thing I want to talk about and address outside of timelines, and I think this one's actually a little bit diverse as to thinking, is the reason I say that is because a lot of people want to have results, but the thing with it is they're not patient with the structure that they're following, right? So for example, you give it 30 days and you get a response back. And there's a whole lot of reasons as to why you're going to get some sort of specific generic response. And the reason why, it's because the response that you're getting back is due to the fact that a lot of these credit bureaus have automated systems specifically designed to enable eOscar to respond as it deems fit. So what usually ends up happening is the first 30 to 60 days, you send out a response to the credit bureaus and they get your mail. But what happens is the eOscar system has a tendency of kicking that back. And when they kick that back, what ends up happening now is you're not getting a desirable outcome. You're not getting what you're looking for. And when that happens, you're basically going to always get some sort of issues when dealing with the credit bureaus. Now, most people will lose patience during that time. They'll get the credit responses and they say, well, this is the answer they gave me. I'm not satisfied with that. What do I do? The alternative to that is really think about ways to mitigate that response, and that's by understanding that you will need a little bit more than the 30-day time frame, right? So these are two things with the timelines, right? The first issue that we talked about is when you send your letter, don't start calculating your 30 days from the day you send it. Start calculating 30 days from when they receive it. Second, don't wait or don't be impatient and start jumping onto another strategy just because your initial 30-day timeline didn't give you a positive outcome. Outcomes can happen. It's going to take some time. There's a whole lot of things that we have to cover that you need to give outcomes the time for it to be, working. You got to allow the credit reporting agencies. Well, you cannot really allow them to be negligent. But what I'm saying is you got to allow yourself and them to create documentation that, like I said, you have to look a little bit more than the 30-day timeline. The other issue that you're going to come across is, well, once they receive the response, what you can do, when they actually receive and you have certified mail-in evidence that they have, is you can actually call the bureaus and you can ask them a series of questions. Now, I know in a comment recently, somebody asked me that if I can create a video around the type of questions to ask the credit bureau. So with this timeline structure, I'm going ahead and including the questions that you need. And I think these are important because a lot of people who are going through the credit repair journey don't necessarily understand the effectiveness and the power to do multiple touch points with the credit bureaus, right? They believe that just sending a letter and, waiting on the credit bureaus to respond and crossing their fingers and hoping that they're going to respond is not sufficient enough. It's not enough to get the desired outcomes that you're looking for. So for that specific reason, I think that you absolutely need to, outreach to the credit bureaus, give them a phone conversation, reach out to them and say, look, here's the 3 questions I need to ask you. And that's exactly what you're going to do, specifically in this order. The first question is, have you received the documentation that were as part of the package for you to review my requests? And that's the first question. And the reason why you want to ask that is, they're going to give you a simple yes or no answer. And typically, if it's a no answer, then you would have the resort to the certified mail return receipts and explain to them that you have sent out mail and documentation, and therefore you have the return receipts to who would have signed or, who would have reviewed those type of things. And if they say, well, somebody in our department and stuff like that, what you got to do is you got to tell them, look, I need you to look at that because I spent time and money to get you that document. And it's your duty to make sure that you review that. Now, because you guys signed on it, you are liable for it. So I need you to please review to see who has this because it's important. And usually they'll go ahead and find it and they'll put it in their system because it gets mismatched. Now, let's assume that they say, yes, we have your documentation. Then from that moment, the second question is, well, how long will it take for you to review my questions and provide me an updated copy of the report? And the reason you want to ask that is you're not necessarily stating to them that you're disputing or challenging it. You're simply asking them to review the documentation and answer the questions specified within that documentation. Now, you might be saying, well, Ali, I did dispute, so there's no reason as to why, they wouldn't be able to, tell me that it's not a dispute when in fact it is. And the reality is I always teach you guys that don't go ahead and right off the, gate, start disputing. You got to start to ask the right questions. When you look at an account, you got to do things that a forensics analyst would do. You got to look at it through the scope of a forensics analyst. You got to learn to deep dive into specific individualized account types. You need to learn how to read them properly. Why? Well, the simple answer is because now you're more specific in reference to as to why you're challenging, number one, the compliance of accuracy, and number two, why the creditor was even allowed to put inaccurate data in the first place. This kind of stops them from trying to kick back a generic response because it's not very specific when you're saying a section 609, section 611, and so on and so forth. The goal is the more specific you are, work with specificity because that's what's going to give you the results. The more specific you are, the more likely that you're going to get a favorable outcome. And the reality is the more specific you are, the higher the chances of actually getting the outcome in the first place. So this is why you have to work with asking the right question. So that would be the second question. How long will it take for you to review my documents and get me an updated copy of my report? That's the second question. And then the third and final question I believe you need to ask is, will you be reaching out to the creditors, or is that something I will need to do? And the reason why this is important is because a lot of people don't realize that when eOscar gets the document, over 80% of the times, the eOscar doesn't even forward an ACDV form to the creditor. That form is essentially used for reasonable investigation and or disputes or resolving disputes. So if eOscar is not even sending out your documentation, that means that it's leaving everything else in the limbo. And that's actually hurting our ability to borrow. That's actually hurting our ability to get any type of reasonable outcomes. And when that happens, we're basically stuck. And that means that we're going to get some generic responses, kickbacks, and things that are going to hurt our ability to get the results that we desire. So by asking the question on if you're going to go ahead and send that document to eOscar, or is that something that I would need to do on my side, enables them to make sure that they have a process and they're following investigative protocols. Because now, if they say, well, we're going to go ahead and take care of that, they can become liable if they don't. And by any means, what happens is because you now initiated their manual review of making sure that they have received your documentation, it's a lot less challenging. So by asking those three specific questions, you're not necessarily trapping yourself to answering things that you're uncomfortable with. And the reason I say that is they might say, well, are you disputing that? The goal is, well, look, there are certain things like any business that you're supposed to answer questions, whether dispute or not. I'm asking a series of questions, but I need you to go through the investigative protocols if in case it turns into a dispute and or a challenge of the creditor side to review that documentation. Hence the reason I'm asking you these questions. So if you do it this way, you're not going to feel trapped and you will get the outcomes that you're looking for. And if you follow this process the right way and the right steps, you can actually create some pretty interesting results, and you're going to get, hopefully the outcome that you're looking for when it comes to getting your score boops, or at least trying to get those negative items off your credit reports. So this should give you guys a little bit of a heads up and a leeway to get the outcomes and the results that you desire. And hopefully you will get what you're looking for through this process. So if you guys have any specific questions in reference to the steps that I just described, understanding the timelines and understanding that sometimes you will need more than 30 days to allow it to, get the results that you're looking for. And of course, following up with the credit bureaus to make that timeline work for you, and the type of questions to ask, specifically the 3 questions. And if you're not too sure about that, go ahead and ask me below this video so that we can have a conversation. But more importantly, I want you to try to follow these steps so you guys can get the results that you're looking for and hopefully get the outcomes. And with that said, if you haven't subscribed yet, consider subscribing. Smash that thumbs up button for me, because the YouTube algorithm will help me push out the content and distribute it to those who are looking to fix their credit, hopefully with the right strategies and tools that is available on this channel. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this content, that you'll take it to heart and you'll know what steps to take. This is your guide and mentor, Ali Tarafter. Definitely catch you guys on the next one. Bye for now.